all the way at the moon, which is how far away you have to be to see the whole Earth. The story begins in 1960 when the United States and the Soviet Union are in a race to see who could be the first person to land on the moon. And no one had ever been to space at all before. No one had left the planet. Yuri Gagarin was the Soviet who was the first to actually leave the planet. In the United States, we had these 7 guys who were the first 7 astronauts to fly. And the plan in the United States was to put them, one person, in this tiny little capsule and stick them on top of a ballistic missile. I mean, it wasn't a real rocket, a ballistic missile, and try to launch them off the planet. Actually, the first American to fly was this guy right here, steely-eyed. And shortly after that, then we launched our first American suborbital, didn't even go around the Earth once, in this rocket. Then we put in a bigger rocket, and we sent John Glenn, the first American, to actually orbit the Earth, and that happened a couple months after Yuri Gagarin did it. That capsule lands in the ocean after its flight, and then the astronaut is picked back up in a helicopter and brought back to land. We had 7 of those flights. Then we built a bigger rocket, and we built a bigger capsule called the Gemini, and the Gemini capsule had 2 people in it. And we learned a couple things with the Gemini program. One was how to do a spacewalk, how to leave the capsule into the vacuum of space, protected only by that fabric around him and that umbilical that connects him to air and pressure and life in general. This is how much room there was in that Gemini capsule, if you can think about that. The longest flight was 14 days. So think about spending 14 days like that. Then we had the biggest rocket, the Saturn V, and that carried a crew of 3 crew members. And what we would do with that is we would send them in December of 1968, 3 crew members, around the moon for the first time. So this is the picture that was sent back in Christmas of 1968. That was the first time anybody had seen the planet Earth by not being on it. I mean, imagine that. This picture is what started the whole Earth movement. This allowed us to see that our planet is in fact a world. In 1969, we sent the first 3 astronauts who would land on the moon. They flew in that capsule to the moon, and then 1 stayed in the capsule and the other 2 go to the surface of the Earth in this lunar lander. The lunar lander was very small. The bottom part of it is the engine that landed, and it becomes the launch platform that lets the top part of it launch back off the moon again. There were no seats in that lander. The crew members stood, and there were only 2, and you can see it's not very big. We had 5 more flights after, that first flight on the moon was 21 hours total. They maybe moved 1,000 kilometers, and that's it. But there we are. The rest was history. We had 5 more flights. We had a lunar rover that would let you rove around and explore a little bit more. And the guys that were on the surface of the moon really spent more time in it than on it. I mean, the suits were very clumsy. They fell down. The lunar soil is very, it's not like regular dirt. It's like little shards of glass. It's toxic. It's abrasive. And it was a big deal. But we learned a lot of things from that. You can see how dirty the guy is. He had 1 suit, and he had to launch in that, and then he had to sleep in it, and the rest of it. And that was a tough road. After 3 days, then that capsule would then take off the bottom part of the lander, and then it would connect back to the Apollo capsule, come back to the Earth, and land it under the parachutes. And you can see how burned that capsule is from having come through the atmosphere. So all these vehicles were only used 1 time. In 1972 and 73, there were 2 space stations in orbit, the very first space station. One was the Russian Salyut space station, and the other was the US Skylab. The Skylab is the one with the big X on it with the wing out to the side. And we had a number of crews Americans in the American one, Russians in the Russian one. In 1975, we did the first joint Soviet-American spaceflight together, the Apollo-Soyuz mission, where we actually joined the Russian Soyuz spacecraft with the American Apollo spacecraft and shook hands. And for all of the war in the world, here off the world, enemies could shake hands in space, which I think was a very huge lesson. What the Russians were flying was this rocket, the Soyuz rocket, and this is their Soyuz capsule. It looked very much kind of like the Apollo capsule. The crew's in the center part, and then that ball on the end is their supplies. It doesn't come back to Earth. Only the capsule comes back to Earth, and it gets rid of the engine on the white part with the solar array. Not very much room in it. As you can see, it looks much like the Apollo capsule. And this is what they're flying today, and today we fly Russians and Americans and all nationalities in this vehicle to space. Now, whereas all of the American capsules landed in the water, this is how the Russian capsule lands. And this is a normal, safe, happy, walk away from, have another day landing. And you can see how burned that capsule is from having come back through the atmosphere. So again, that's only used one time. In 1961 in the United States, we had a new rocket called the Space Shuttle. And this one was designed to not burn up as it came through the atmosphere. It was made up of 3 parts. The shuttle orbiter, which is the thing with the wings, and that's where the crew would live, and that would come back and land again. It had 3 main engines off the back that was fueled by liquid hydrogen and oxygen, which lived in the big orange tank, and then 2 solid rocket motors on the side, which were reusable. So we had a reusable rocket in 1981. That shuttle part was designed to fly like any of the capsules in space and then come back and land on a runway with no engine. So it was a glider. It just came back and landed on the runway. And then the tiles were pretty much good. It was re-inspected and then used again. And the other thing the shuttle did that was new is for the first time, it let women fly. So these were the first 6 women to fly in space. I was actually number 11, so I'm not in this group. Now you think being an astronaut is a very glamorous kind of job, but I show you this to show you this is the last view anybody sees of you before you get in the capsule. Very glamorous. This is what it looks like in the shuttle capsule. We are wearing a different suit. We have a lot more room. That's me with the glasses in the foreground right there. Once we get into orbit, the crew is living where the windows are in that area up there, and then the whole back of the cargo bay is open, and that's where we could take various different satellites and projects to space. And so over time we took communication satellites, experimental satellites, and the one that most people remember is the Hubble telescope, which was carried up in the cargo bay of the shuttle, picked up with a robot arm, left in space, backed away, and then when it came time to do repairs, we would fly the shuttle up to it, grab it with the arm, stick it back in the cargo bay, and do repairs on it, which is pretty cool. For the last 10 years and 37 missions, we used the shuttle and that cargo bay to assemble the International Space Station. And it was done one piece at a time. So the first piece that went up was a Russian piece, and then we brought up this center node. And so it's kind of like one of those tinker toys, you know, the sticks and the balls that go together. So in this node here, I can stick a module on the top and the bottom, and then 4 around the sides. And then I stick on another node and I continue to build. So we stick the node on the first Russian module, and then we stuck on another Russian module. And then we stuck on a laboratory module. And so the shuttle would come up and dock to one of those holes, and then pick up the module out of the cargo bay, stick it on, and that's the way we built it. We put on a robot arm, we put on solar arrays, we put on a truss that let us move the solar arrays out around the vehicle. And this is a real picture of the shuttle docked to the space station, which is pretty cool. They did that with a Soyuz, backed away, took a picture. Ended up with 4 solar arrays and then modules from the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency has a number of modules on there, and a bunch of experimental modules. So this is what it looks like today. So here's what it looks like in space. In the absence of gravity, everything will float. If you're wondering how that picture was done, and that was me in my younger days, here's how that picture was done. Now normally you would collect things like checklists and food and tools and various other things, so keep that out. Without any gravity, there is no up. So each one of these people thinks that they are up. Without any gravity, you can lift very heavy weights with ease, or you can do anything that you actually want to do. And most important and most fun, without any gravity, you cannot walk, you must fly. Now you notice you never see them stopping, because what's going to happen is he's going to crash into the wall when he gets there. So when you get really experienced, this is the way you move. Watch his feet. Now without any gravity, you can do some very interesting things with your body. We ask you, please do not try this at home. We are trained professionals. And it's a good place to demonstrate physics. So you know for every force there is an equal and opposite force. That's 95 pounds of water. And this is me, and I'm not moving forward, but just by wiggling my body around, I can do a complete turn. Here's the demonstration of the ice skater, another good physics experiment without gravity. He'll spin him, and you'll notice when he opens his arms, he'll slow down. When he closes his arms, he'll spin up. And he can do that all day long and never get dizzy. That's the cool part. Okay, here's another one of just moving your body around. Now he's trying to do that same thing I did, but you know, guys can never get that hip action going the way they need to. All right, so now you've seen people floating around, but what happens if you don't want to float? You want to stay in one place. Without any gravity, if I just touch the key on this keyboard, I'll float away. So all over the space station, there are these loops that you can slide your toes under that will hold you in one place wherever you want to work. Or you don't even need a loop. You can just loop your toe around something or hook your leg around something. So it's very efficient. Other things about the absence of gravity. This here is a ball of water. And in the absence of gravity, surface tension is the strongest force there. This is orange juice, which is much more photogenic. So here's the way that works. So that bag he's squeezing from is the bag we drink from. So he's squeezing water out of a straw, and the water, because of surface tension, will just continue to form a big ball. And he's putting a lot of water in that ball because he's a guy. Now he's taking a GoPro camera and he's thrown it inside of the ball and turned it on. Typical guy thing to do. And here's what it looks like from inside the water ball looking out. Now I really show you this for this next part because here's the water ball on his hand. And see the way it sticks to his hand? Okay, that's going to be important later because that's the way you actually take a bath. So the drinking, we have these bags, and in the bag is a powder that will be what the drink will be when you add water. So it can be coffee and tea or juice, and if it's a completely empty bag, you put water in it, it's drinking water. And you put a straw in it. You fill that bag up from a water dispenser, then you put a straw in it, and the straw has a clamp, because without any gravity, once I've started drinking from the straw and I take my mouth off, it's like a siphon and the water keeps coming out. So learning to drink is interesting. There is no refrigerator, there is no oven, so the food has already been prepared, it's been freeze-dried or vacuum packed and put in these little pouches. You take the pouch, you rehydrate it, with the water dispenser. You put it in a little oven and warm it up. And then you don't have a plate, you don't have a knife or a fork, you have a scissors and a spoon. And you cut the top off of the package and you use your spoon. The Americans provide half the food, the Russians provide the other half of the food. This is the Russian food. And there's the spoons. So you cut the top off of the package and then you dig your spoon into it. Now you'll see that little bandolier of tubes, plastic bottles behind him. Those are the liquid condiments, the liquid salt and the liquid pepper. Because without gravity, you wouldn't want any of that floating around. Another demonstration of surface tension. This is a spoon with peanut butter and a ball of honey. And here the crew has made sushi. They've taken the bottom of a piece of hardware to use as a plate, and they've gotten some fresh food sent up, so they've got some seaweed, and they use a little bit of condiment for surface tension, and it sticks it to the plate. And then he's got rice and tuna on there. You have to get creative when you don't have a lot of food. The ground sends up other things for the crew, so now there are tubes of spices and flavorings and things so that you can create your own meals. So here the crew has made pizza out of tortillas and tomato paste and some sliced cheese. Every 3 or 4 months, there is a cargo vehicle that comes up that brings the crew new supplies, equipment and clothing and water and food, and that's the only time the crew gets fresh food. And so the crew is always thrilled to see fresh food, and of course whatever they can concoct on their tortilla always gets more interesting with fresh food. The crew on board exercises 2 hours every day, and they do it aerobic and resistive exercise. One of the aerobic exercises on this bicycle, which they can use, and basically you strap yourself to the seat and pedal away. The guy with the headset, he's watching a movie while he bicycles. Then there is a treadmill, and you bungee yourself down to the treadmill and turn it on, and you can run against the treadmill. And then there is a resistive device that allows you, because of the resistance in that machine, to use your own body weight to do the same kind of exercise that you could do in a gym. So when he pushes up, the machine pushes down. And because soccer is a big thing, here's the crew with an international soccer team demonstrating why they are not professional soccer players. See that in World Cup soccer. You can see somebody running on the treadmill in the back there, and this is a great play. Okay, here's the way you take your bath. There is no bathtub, there is no shower. You take the water ball and you put it on you, just like it was on his hands. So you put it on one body part, you rub it around, you take a cloth with some soap, soap yourself, put on another ball of water, and then dry that off, and then do another body part. So you do one body part at a time. Brushing your teeth is normal. You have a toothbrush and a toothpaste, but you have to swallow the toothpaste because there's no place else to put it. Sleeping. People always ask, how do you sleep in space without any gravity? On the shuttle, we got a sleeping bag, and you tied it off to the wall, the floor, the ceiling, wherever you wanted to sleep, and you got in, you zip it up, and those blue straps are Velcro, and you put them on you, and so it feels like you're tucked in, and then you put your head on the pillow, which is a block of foam, and you Velcro your face to it, which sounds a little strange, but if you think, when you go to sleep at night, and you put your head down, your neck is at rest. If your neck is at rest, the rest of you can go to sleep. Now, what you don't tuck into that sleeping bag floats. So your arms float out in front of you like that. Now, because there's no gravity, blood doesn't rush to your arm, but you wake up in the morning and there's an arm sort of floating out next to you. Very weird. On space station, everybody has their own little compartment to sleep in. So they've got a sleeping bag and all of their personal items, and then those compartments that can close the door, and they're just ringed around. So everybody on board, and there are 7 right now on board, has their own little compartment to sleep in. Okay, here's the question everybody wants to know. How do you use the toilet? So I'm going to tell you. Here it goes. All right, this is a Russian system here, and men and women use it all the same way. For liquid, you slide your feet into those blue strap things there, and you take that hose with the orange funnel on, or yellow funnel down, and you hold it to the right part of your body for liquid, and you turn it on. And when you do, it has a little air that sucks the liquid through the tube into the back, where it is then reprocessed into drinking water. Or as the crew likes to say, making tomorrow's coffee out of today's coffee. For solid waste collection, it's a different thing. You lift the seat up, and there's a big can underneath of that. You put in a bag, and you put the seat back down, and you hold yourself down, very important step. Do what you're going to do, and then there's tissues and wipes, clean everything up, put it in there, and then pull the string, it closes the bag. You put in a new bag for the next guy. When that can is filled up with bags, you remove the can, put on a lid, put in a new can, and you wait for the cargo vehicle.